Top of the morning, everyone. My name is Tshidi and I'm back with another video. As promised, here's another video that talks about something that not a lot of people actually address, which talks about the EU CV trends. So there's a lot of candidates I know out there that are looking for opportunities in the EU, or they're looking for jobs in the EU. And some of these guys already have what it takes to actually make it in some of these companies. However, there are certain things that are required or that are normally on CVs that some people either don't know about and they don't put them, and then you then end up being in a disadvantage, or sometimes they are there that are honestly, personally based on today's date and based on what we're currently doing in the market point of view and the information that we can get from candidates. I honestly do not think these are necessary. However, if you disagree with me, please let me know. But these are some of the top 9 things that I've actually found out since moving here that I think should not be happening. And I was actually surprised in most of these scenarios when I applied that I realized that some of these things were still required. So let's go through them and see what those are. The first one is photographs. In most EU countries, the requirement to actually have a photo on your CV is one of those things the same as having your name. And if you don't have a name, or if you don't have a photo on your CV, most recruiters actually overlook that particular application. And I do, however, think that putting a photo on the CV is actually one of those olden things that shouldn't be happening. And here are my reasons why I don't actually like the idea of putting photos on a CV. Number one is, photos on a CV can lead to very unconscious bias or discrimination based on appearance. People could look at you and think this person must be this age. So they could look at your age or your race or your gender, and it distracts from actually the main focus, which is your skill sets. And I wish that in 2024 and beyond, most EU recruiters can actually stop asking for candidates to have photos in their CV. That's the first one that I think needs to actually stop, because I don't see any value in it being on somebody's CV, and there's no value in it in allowing you to actually get the job. Number 2, which is your date of birth or age. This one also kind of shocked me quite a lot because when I moved here, I realized that I had to always put my date of birth or my age on my CV. In the EU, it's one of those things that's still very tricky in the sense that a lot of people still do it, or a lot of recruiters still expect it. And if you don't have it, sometimes they'll even ask for it. In some countries, or in some EU countries, it is a norm. As I mentioned, it's something that is considered and it's expected that you should actually put your age or your date of birth on that because the assumption is that it helps recruiters quickly gauge your experience and your level of career stage. Now, unfortunately, that's not always the case, because some people change their careers as they go along. So it doesn't necessarily mean just because you're 45, you've got the right experience versus somebody who's actually 21 or 25. So those are some of the things that I think shouldn't be looked at. And similarly to photographs, including age or date of birth can lead to age discrimination. Now, it's one of those things where people make assumptions that because you are a certain age, you might not actually have the right capabilities or the right abilities, or you might not have the right energy level. The team is a bit younger, so we think that you're not going to fit into the team, or you're not going to be tech savvy enough for this particular role, or based on, quite a lot of other different things. So that's why I don't think in 2024, guys, as recruiters in the EU, can we please stop asking candidates to put that age or that date of birth? If you don't have an age or date of birth on any roles that you applied to for the company that I work for, trust me, we will look at your CV for what it is and not necessarily care about having your age or anything along those lines. Number 3, this one is a bit tricky because a lot of people are going to come back to me and say, hey, you can't say that. Nationality or citizenship. Now, this is very relevant, especially in the EU when it comes to or in most countries. It's very relevant in the sense that people want to know what your nationality or your citizenship is for work permit reasons or visa requirements. So recruiters often look out for this information to determine if there's going to be any legal hurdles in the future. However, I don't think that it's important that people actually put that nationality or citizenship because of a few reasons. Number one is because nationality can lead to discrimination based on national origin. So people can sometimes look at you and think, this person is from this country, they are known to be this. This person is from that country, they're known to be lazy, or they're known to have this. It overshadows one's qualifications and capabilities, and it actually contributes to a less diverse workplace. And some of the people you live in here, managers even saying something as basic as, oh no, I've worked with somebody from this country. Oh, they're always all like this. Now, once again, it actually doesn't mean that me, because I'm from this country, I'm exactly the same as my countrymen. It's an assumption and it's a very horrible stereotype. So that's why I do think rather what we should be asking candidates to add onto their CV is the eligibility to work in the job location. Are you eligible to work in the job location? We will then figure out some of the rest of the other things. And by that, we can always ask, by what means are you eligible? Are you eligible because you are, you've got an EU citizenship? Yes, you've got an EU citizenship, then that's fantastic. Or are you eligible because of any other reason? But I do not think that in 2024 we should be asking that. But like I said, some recruiters might come at me and say, hey, you're going to mess up our process that's been working, but sorry about that. I don't think it's necessary anymore. Eligibility to work in the job location is more important. Now, this one is one of those that I'm really passionate about, and I don't think it should ever be there. Marital status and family information. Now, while this seems very outdated and irrelevant for the professions and the different qualifications that we're looking at, in some traditional backgrounds, a lot of people still expect to see more information about marital status, family information, how many kids you have. So people put, and I've seen it where it's like married with 3 kids, ages 5 and 6 on this. It's a norm. I'm not saying recruiters out there are asking for it, but I'm just saying it's such a big norm in the EU that a lot of people actually still put such kind of information. Now, the information can be very discriminatory and normally I would say against different genders. And sometimes it's because people look at your CV and it says divorced, 2 kids. And some people start assuming to say, oh, this one is divorced to 2 kids. Does that mean that they don't have a family support, or they don't have this, or they don't have that? For me, that's why I'm saying I don't think your marital status and your family information is necessary at all in your ability to do the job. And I don't think it should be there. I don't think anybody should actually put some of these things in there. The 5th one is conditional. And I'll explain why. The 5th one is languages. Now, Europe has got a very diverse linguistic workforce. Like, it's got different people from different countries. The skill sets are very different. Candidates are normally expected to have specific language experience for the specific roles that require that. So for example, in some areas, you're in a contact center and the market that you're servicing is a German market, then you have to actually have that language. It makes no sense to put somebody that can only speak English in that particular role. But there are certain roles, for example, that do not require you to necessarily have that language, especially if the company says they're an international company. If you're an international company and you still emphasize on requiring people to actually have these specific languages, it defeats the whole purpose if that person is not necessarily going to be required to do their job in that language. So that's why I'm saying the language one is very conditional, because there are certain roles that, yes, you're going to read contracts in this language, you're going to do this in this language. Yes, in those scenarios, you definitely do need to actually have that language. But there are certain jobs that you don't need that language. So it's okay to basically leave it as blank. And I know almost every job that you see nowadays always has this language is required, German and English. And you're saying, but you're going to be servicing a market that's not necessarily speaking that language. Why do I need this particular language? So that's one of those where I'm like, it's very conditional. If it's required based on that. Now, the 6th one is detailed educational history. Now, for a lot of people, in some countries, there's normally a requirement to have specific experience. You need to have specific education. You need to actually be looking at, so some of them will look at, do you have a master's? Do you have a PhD? Do you have this? And that is a requirement. Now, what I've seen sometimes is the fact that because of this requirement, you find that candidates then put way too much information on that, on their CVs, which then, number one, creates a CV that is way too long, because now you've got all the information that is not necessary for that job. Providing too much detail in the CV makes it very lengthy. It makes it so long for people to actually read through it. And it also can lead to biases based on prestige of the institution, to say, oh, this one is from Harvard, that means they're very smart. Or this one is from this university, that means they're very smart. In most cases, your basic experience or your qualifications should be enough and should suffice. And what we always advise people is, rather list it to say bachelor's degree in this, master's in this, do not put all your subjects in that, because it really adds no value to have all these subjects that are included in that particular CV that you currently have shared. And then this one for me like gets to me. I think this is one of those where personally I just don't see the need in it, and I don't think we should actually still be doing it. Detailed personal interest. Now, this I'm talking about hobbies, interest. It can be very beneficial in the U for some of the people, but it provides a very, unfortunately, biased opinion about somebody's background. Now, even though it's important to sometimes mention that when you're having a breakdown with your team to say, hey, this is what I like, that's very different. But when you put it in your CV, it's very different. And while it might provide a very holistic view of who the candidate is, that can be had as a conversation. It does not need to be on the CV. Now, secondly, the other reason why I don't think that is important is, imagine you're interviewing for a job where the whole team likes to go hiking together on a weekend, and you hate hiking. And you go through this interview, and the first thing that they see is like, oh no, your hobbies are sitting home and playing video games, whereas they love to go hiking. Do you honestly think, number one, you're going to fit into that team? And secondly, do you also think that in that particular scenario, you even stand a chance? I don't think you do, because most of the time there's already a perception and assumption about what you're able to do and what you're capable of based on what your interests and your hobbies are. So this is one of those that I honestly do not think has a place, especially on CVs, because some of us these days, my hobbies are spending time with my kids. It's not necessarily going out there in the outdoors, and there's nothing wrong with that. Somebody's hobbies might be going hiking and mountain climbing and these things, and those are hobbies and interests that they've got and should not affect either one of us when we're actually looking for jobs. The eighth one is certificates and diplomas. In some EU countries, particularly where educational qualifications are highly valued, listing and attaching copies of relevant certificates and diplomas can be very advantageous. Now, here's where the problem comes in. You find that you get a CV, and in that CV, there's about 23, 24 different pages. And you go through that CV, the first 3 pages are somebody's CV, or the first 5 pages are somebody's CV or resume that covers what they've done. And then after that, you've got 10 different testimonials. Then you have 10 different certificates and diplomas that are attached. Some of the jobs do not even care whether you've got those qualifications. All they care about is, do you have the experience for the job? So I always say, unless it's actually been stated and required by the job, and you've stated it as a recruiter to say, this is what you're looking for, it is very, very unfair to then decline candidates that do not attach these things, because they are not necessary for every single job that these people are applying for. So that's why I'm saying it is very unnecessary in most cases. The only advice is, I hope that we stopped asking people to provide us with a list of all these certificates together with the resume. It can be something that we can request for on the side, but to then attach this as a PDF makes these long documents that nobody can actually go through at any given time. The last one, this one I've spoken about, I've done a video about it, and which is cover letter formalities. Now, there are certain EU countries that have got very specific requirements, strict cover letter requirements that they've got. There's specific adherences to say the formal structure should be addressing the following. It should cover this, it should cover that, and if it doesn't cover that, we're not going to consider you. A very overly strict formality when it comes to writing a cover letter sometimes affects the candidate's ability to express who they are. Some people are a bit more creative in how they express themselves and what they need to emphasize on, or some of the skills that they're actually looking for, or the skills that they currently have. And to have a very structured, formalized cover letter where you sometimes even create a space where you want them to answer specific things as cover letter stifles that creativity. One of the things that I also do say to a lot of people is that I've spoken to a lot of recruiters in the last couple of years, and we normally discuss it together as just as recruiters. Do we honestly still need cover letters in 2024 or in the future? And the reason I say that is because if you speak to more than 100 or 200 recruiters or hiring managers and you ask them, how many times do they read cover letters? You'll find that in most of those cases, only 1% of the hiring managers and recruiters actually read cover letters, because the information that you're already looking for is summarized beautifully on the resume. So that's why I'm just saying, for me, these are the norms and these are the different trends when it comes to CVs that I do hope do stop in 2024 and the future. But tell me what you guys think. What are some of the things that you've been asked to provide when it comes to CVs? It doesn't necessarily have to only be in the EU. It can be anywhere else. It can be in Africa, in South Africa, Botswana, anywhere out there. So let me know some of the things that you've been asked to actually provide that you just think, I just wish that nobody asked me to do that. Top of the morning once again. My name is Tshidi, and yeah, I'm back with another video, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.